Hey everybody, welcome back to Barter Hordes. My name is Robert, and I'm here this late Saturday afternoon to do a quick review of the two most recent books that I've read. I kind of got away from reading some new releases, and I let a little bit of a stack kind of pile up on my desk. So the last week or so I've started to attack that pile, and these are the first two from the new release pile that I've been reading lately. The first one is by a famous author, Isabel Allende, In the Midst of Winter. Allende has been writing for decades. She's been a big deal for decades. I first came across her work when I read The House of the Spirits, which I think is what everybody's read by her. It's probably her most famous novel. And it's part magical realism, part South and Central American politics. And I found it fascinating. But I haven't read anything by her since then. And so when her new novel came out recently, I think it came out in December or January, I don't remember the exact date, I picked it up and then it sat on my desk for a while, but I finally got to it. It's a really enjoyable novel. It's the story of three characters who meet in Brooklyn. The first one is, his name is Richard. He's the department chair at NYU in languages. He's in his early 60s, and he hires a visiting professor from Chile, Lucia, the second character, and she moves into the basement apartment in his brownstone in Brooklyn. The third character he meets by accident. It's one of those blizzards that occasionally strike New England, kind of like what's happening this week. And he is out and about and loses control of his vehicle and slides, not dangerously fast, but slides into the back of a Lexus. And the third character is the driver of this Lexus. And when he gets out to talk to her to make sure she's okay and to exchange insurance information, he's not able to communicate with her. She seems freaked out. She doesn't seem to understand what he's saying. And as she starts to drive away, in a last-ditch effort to do the right thing, he throws his business card, his card from the university, into her vehicle so she'll be able to contact him. And then he goes home. And late that evening, she shows up on his doorstep at his Brooklyn home, and she still seems freaked out. She's still not really able to understand him. He's not able to understand her. And so to help translate, he asks Lucia to come up from the basement apartment. And that's how the three characters come into one space. And the series of events that unfolds after that has got a mystery element to it. So I'm not going to tell you any more about that. But the book goes back and forth between their current predicament that they're trying to solve, and then as they're getting to know each other, they're telling the other characters the stories of their own lives. As I mentioned, Lucia is from Chile. Evelyn, the second woman, is a little bit younger than they are. She is a refugee from Guatemala, and Richard spent some time in South America as well. And each of them has a heart-rending, just absolutely brutal past story to tell. And so the three of them kind of come together to help each other, not only with their current problem, which I won't discuss here, but they kind of bring out each other's stories in a way that helps them heal somewhat. So it's a really beautiful novel in that regard. It doesn't have the magical realism element that The House of the Spirits has. It's a straightforward, realistic novel, but it still has some of the South American and Central American politics, which I don't understand fully, but you don't need to know that much about it to appreciate this novel. Basically, you just have to imagine corruption and violence and more corruption and more violence, and that's the context that their lives are coming from. And so at the end, they do manage to help each other through this contemporary problem and also somewhat heal from their personal pasts. So it's a really interesting book. The second one is quite different in character. It's also a contemporary novel by Rachel Joyce. It's called The Music Shop. And I thought I had read something else by Rachel Joyce. I was under the impression that I had read The Unlikely Pilgrimage of Harold Fry, which many people on Goodreads and BookTube have mentioned. But it turns out when I read the synopsis of it that I haven't read that book at all. So I've confused it with something else. But when I started reading this one, I was just absolutely captivated. I read this thing very quickly because I literally could not stop. It's one of those books, for me, it's very much like Fredrik Backman's books. I know he's been super popular. I love him to death. I read everything he writes. His book, A Man Called Ove, and his other book, his more recent one called Beartown, are probably my two favorites. But they're just so incredibly charming. I don't think they're the kinds of books that are going to win literary prizes, but I don't care. I'll read them anyway, and I'll enjoy them, and I'll remember them. The Music Shop starts off in 1988. It's in a very run-down and rapidly declining suburb in England. The main character, Frank, grew up with a mother who instilled in him a love of music, and especially music through vinyl records. Everything from classical to jazz to everything in between. And Frank is determined that he can't bear for vinyl to die as compact discs are starting to take over. And after his mother dies, he's kind of at loose ends anyway. And so he takes the money he has from his mother's estate and he opens a record shop in this rundown area of town. And Frank has a special gift where he's able to talk to somebody for a few minutes and know exactly what track, what song that person needs to hear, even if it's something the person has no experience with. So you might come in, there's a character who comes in early in the book who only listens to Chopin, and he gives him Aretha Franklin, and it changes his life. And so Frank has this gift. And then one day, soon into the novel, a woman shows up outside his shop, is looking in the window, and she just faints. And Frank runs out to help, of course, and he immediately is struck by this woman, and he feels a connection to her, but he doesn't know why. And so the rest of the book is them coming together and forming a bond as Frank gives her music lessons. She says she doesn't listen to music, and so he can't read her, he can't tell what she needs to hear. And then so as they get closer and closer, the book gets more and more complicated, and I won't go any further than that because there are some twists and turns. It's got the romantic comedy vibe to it, but I was wrong on most of the things I predicted that were going to happen, so that kind of made it fun too. But for somebody like me, music was such a huge part of my identity until I went off into graduate school in English. I was a classical musician for years and years and years. This book is just absolutely wonderful, and I couldn't put it down, and it goes right on the same shelf for me with Fredrik Backman in terms of the most charming books of the year. So I absolutely loved it. So now I will have to go back and pick up her other books that I thought I'd read, and I haven't. So that's where I am right now. I've just started Mira T. Lee's Everything Here is Beautiful. I'm just a few pages into that, so I really can't say much about it yet. But I'm continuing with my contemporary new releases, trying to get caught up on that stack while I have a couple of classics on order. I'm going to read along with Eric at the Lonesome Readers new classics project online. If you haven't seen that, you should check out his channel. And that's it for me. I'll talk to you again soon. Please leave me a comment or any questions down below, and I'll be with you next time. Bye.